Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. The weekend is here. Baseball is here. Well, we'll start with the pre-show as we usually do. Russ, go ahead.
All right. So I wasn't on Twitter a ton yesterday, and apparently a bagel shop owner, I'll say bagel shop in quotations, in St. Louis decided to get some bagels and I guess chop them up horizontally like they were like he was slicing bread, and showed it a picture of that in the box. And it's really funny because I didn't know any of this went on yesterday, and apparently, even the New York City chief detective said that would never happen under his watch in New York. The interesting thing was my initial reaction, and it's irrational, right? But my initial reaction was, why did someone mutilate these bagels?
So, okay, did they cut them like the thickness of, say, toast, and like they cut them like in slices?
Yeah, like a thin toast, yeah, like a Melba toast thickness.
Okay, I mean, because I know there's a bagel place, not like a chain, but there's a bagel place in the Buffalo area, and when it's day old bagels, they'll make bagel chips out of them. Like,
yeah, but they still do it the other way, the traditional cutting way.
Right.
They don't cut it like it's a loaf of bread. Like, there's something to the invention of the bagel in the sense that the circumference, and it's going to sound like a math class, Eck would like this, but the circumference of the bagel really is made so that you could actually spread the right amount of cream cheese and the right amount of butter or whatever you want on it, peanut butter. But the minute you do the other thing to it, you're really limiting your amount of spreadability there. And to me, it's not going to taste as good.
Yeah, you're limiting the area of spreadability.
Exactly. Yes. And that's a technical term, but yeah.
No, it's funny because I have rules when it comes to bagels.
Okay.
I like cream cheese. I like butter. I cannot put cream cheese on a toasted bagel because cream cheese will then melt, and I don't like the consistency of cream cheese on a hot toasted bagel. If I get cream cheese, it has to be on a regular bagel, untoasted but fresh, obviously.
Yeah.
With butter, it has to be darkly toasted, not like light. I've gone to so many places.
How darkly toasted? Like what is your
like brown, not burned, but like brown.
Okay.
So it's got
some unreasonable.
So it's got some firmness to it.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I say, I go for a toasted bagel with butter, and if you basically it's warm and it's got a little singe on it, and that's not toasted.
No, that's just. We want to get you out of here quick so we can get the next guy his bagel.
Right. So now I'm the pain in the ass who goes in there and says, I want it darkly toasted with extra butter. Meaning
you actually say darkly toasted.
I say darkly toasted because how many times do I have to say I want it toasted?
On your coffee cup, did they put curmudgeon? Is that the name they put?
Oh, no, that's my middle name. Come on. Now, going along with my curmudgeonness, if that is a word, you know how your phone will update automatically overnight?
Yeah.
Well, I have my phone plugged in, to recharge overnight. I wake up in the morning, and all of a sudden, there's a new operating system on my phone, and all the symbols are changed. Nothing really has changed in terms of the functionality because it's a Galaxy S8, so it only has certain it has certain parameters. But all the buttons have changed. It's like it used to be like you'd have a little phone for the phone, like a little receiver. Now it's like it looks like a C. It's like and all the different symbols. The camera barely looks like a camera. I mean, they changed these to these sort of like really like simple looking app buttons, and it's like, why can't you just keep it the same? People are used to it. I've been using the same operating system basically for 2 years, and all they do is change things around and screw things up.
Because there's some genius somewhere that says, everybody's been doing it this way, but it would be better that way. And he sold somebody on it. And sure enough, they do the update. And if enough people hate it, they'll change it back on the next update.
Right. These are the people in Silicon Valley that are justifying their job. I think I'd mentioned it before. After watching an HBO documentary on this woman, Elizabeth Holmes,
Yeah.
who put together some multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it was all basically a shell game where she was misrepresenting what she'd invented.
Right.
I don't buy anything. Like, I don't buy anything from Silicon Valley. I really don't. I think obviously,
you do when you buy some products, but I get what you're saying otherwise.
yes. And I have tried to avoid, when it comes to like computers and things of that nature, I've tried to avoid the operating system being refreshed or updated, because that inherently always screws up. Like my MacBook Pro, I have prevented a new operating system on that for at least 2 years, because the update screws up your computer.
Yeah, I there are certain updates I won't do, and you're right. It does get to a point where it could screw it up. So sometimes you never know when that's going to be, though, and it does take you by surprise sometimes. So you have to be choosy about what updates you allow to happen.
Yeah. All right, let's get started. We may do an abbreviated show here. Depends on, we may have Kevin Allen. He may pop in at some point.
The abbreviated show will not include anything about the Philadelphia Flyers. If you believe they're still alive, then obviously you believe in Bigfoot and a lot of other things. The earth is flat, so we're not even going there.
Loch Ness Monster is real.
Right.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, March 29th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm the Abominable Snowman, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the big game of yesterday, and that was the Montreal Canadiens at the Columbus Blue Jackets. I watched that, fairly. I checked in regularly on that game, going back and forth. And Montreal had a 1-0 lead on a Brent Kulak goal.
Yeah.
Columbus came back, tied it up. Then Montreal took the lead again. And when Columbus tied it up at 2-2, I got sort of that like air out of the balloon feeling when it came to Montreal. And then Carey Price, I didn't think he was particularly strong last night, Russ. And again,
he got weaker as the game went on.
Yeah, that David Savard goal. Granted, it was from point blank range, and it was a nice setup. I think it was by Dubinsky, but that's a save that Carey Price has to make if that team is going to make the playoffs.
There were a couple bad line changes and things for the Canadiens. The defense, by the third period, it was like a jailbreak for Columbus. Like the way they would get down the ice and there wouldn't be any coverage, and they could see that and they feasted on that. And I give Panarin credit. I give the Zingle credit. Those guys were getting some great shots. And Price did make some great saves. That one on Zingle was a great save, but he did give up some bad ones late, and Bobrovsky was the opposite. He was bad early and then seemed to get locked in late. This was, a massive win for Columbus. This was the fool's goal that Flyers fans were looking for. This was, now it does look like the schedule will probably eat up the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, right now, Columbus has 77 games. Montreal has 78. They both have 90 points. I know that Columbus is coming to Buffalo on Sunday. I'm going to be going to that game. That'll be a guaranteed 2 points. Although they're playing at Nashville the night before, so there might be desperation on the part of the Blue Jackets in Buffalo. Montreal plays at Winnipeg on Saturday, and that obviously is a tough match. So they do have tough schedules going down the stretch.
Look, if you're a good team, you got to beat those teams, but I do think it's less likely now that Montreal does. And Max Domi definitely got off his game last night, and that was always a failing in his game. Like, he could be really good when he keeps his head on straight.
Yeah.
But when something doesn't go right for him and then he sort of lets it get to him, he does let it get to him for the entire game sometimes, and that definitely affected him. This is where it's probably going to fall short for Montreal and probably is good for Columbus, because it took a little while. Duchesne had some plays in that game, but it does seem like those guys are playing a little better together now.
Now, a couple things from that game. One, the NHL is not going to have a hearing when it came to Andrew Shaw on the hit on Adam McQuaid.
Yeah, I thought that was intentional. You thought it wasn't.
Yeah, no, because it was on a power play,
Yeah.
and you could see Shaw. He was coming back to get over the blue line, or back on the right side of the blue line for either a dump in or a carry in. And you could see as he was curling back toward the blue line, he tried to sort of evade. And now, this is Andrew Shaw. We know Andrew Shaw's got a reputation, and that's
Andrew Shaw would do that to his dentist as a reflex. Like, I just think that's his normal reflex
after he'd done a bridge on him, probably.
Right.
But no, I for this one instance, I actually think that that it wasn't his intent. But and I think the NHL agreed, and that's why there was no hearing. Now, McQuaid. I mean, I don't believe he came back for the rest of the game, and he's been basically a 5-6 for Columbus. But they got him for a reason, for depth on the blue line, and if he's out for a significant period, that's gonna hurt the Blue Jackets. I mean, I think it would have been detrimental for the Habs if Shaw was out, because Shaw's been a key player for them.
Yeah, no question. And Torts did make a big deal on the bench. He was already doing this with his elbow.
He was losing his mind. It was it's funny because he was losing his mind, and then they cut to a commercial, and I had the Columbus feed on the NHL Center Ice package, and it's this happy John Tortorella doing this thing about like a water filtration system in the Columbus area. It was like, "Hi, I'm John Tortorella. Do you want clean water?" Or like, "Oh my God."
Oh, that's fantastic. They
came back from the commercial, and they're showing him losing his mind. Now, the other thing was Jonathan Drouin. It's sort of been a story that's floated under the radar, but he has not had a good year for the Habs. He's not lived up to the expectations that were thrust upon him when he was traded for Sergachev a couple years ago. He was on the third line. It's not exactly being buried on the fourth line, but he was playing with Kotkaniemi and Joel Armia. I mean, this is Claude Julien basically telling him, "You're too much of a defensive liability for me to put into our top six."
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although I will say, last couple of weeks, Armia has really played great. Like, I'm happy for him because he's actually turned into a decent role player. It really has.
Well, I think the pairing. I mean, they got Armia in the deal with Winnipeg, that they wanted to clear salary for Steve Mason. So Armia was the prize. They got him basically because they wanted him to be a fellow countryman of Kotkaniemi, to be his line mate, to be a guy that apparently Kotkaniemi admired Armia. So it was a good acquisition, and they ended up being a good pairing because Kotkaniemi has played really well in his rookie year, a lot better than I thought he ever was. So, I mean, that's been a success. But, I mean, honestly, if we're talking Drouin, and Drouin signed an extension, and he's right now worked his way out of the top six. I mean, once you work your way out of the top six in Montreal, like Alex Galchenyuk, you don't usually find your way back.
I'm not buying any of that. I think right now there are too high of expectations for him. His high point level for his career is 53. He's got 52, so he's going to beat that. He's got 18 goals. This is not a horrific year. This is not like he's got 35 points. So he's 24 years old. Just about what you see is just about what you see. Julian's trying to get him to be a little more responsible. But it turns out, hey, he's probably never going to be more than a 60-point guy, which is still good in the NHL. But based on where he's drafted and what he showed early, people thought more was coming, and it probably isn't. And that's what happens.
So in that case, does Tampa win that deal? Because Sergachev, I mean, he's been a second pairing guy.
I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's a draw. I'm not sure Sergachev has made a massive difference for them. I mean, has he popped in 15 goals? No, I don't think so. So I think it's been like a draw. I think it helped each team in a different way. If you want to say because they got a defenseman, okay. I mean, Drouin can play center. I still think it's like a draw. I really do.
Just to touch on this game, the Sabres and the Red Wings. It was a 5-4 win for the Red Wings. Tyler Bertuzzi scoring in overtime, and the reason I bring it up because these are two teams playing out the string. There is some consequence here in terms of Phil Housley, and I did a radio spot yesterday on Buffalo Radio talking about Housley and what the outlook is here. And it was funny because basically what I said was Pierre LeBrun on TSN's Insider Trading later in the day essentially said the same thing I did, which was 3 or 4 weeks ago it sounded like there was no chance that Housley was going to get fired, and now because they've gone 3-15-3 in the last 21 games. Now there's a little bit of doubt. I still think they're not gonna fire him because
I agree.
Right now, like I mentioned yesterday, how many teams are out there looking for coaches? And Buffalo might be the worst or second worst option in terms of. And I'm saying this. The Sabres are a proud organization. There's a lot of support in Buffalo, but in terms of the attractiveness of the job, the only one I think is less attractive than this one is Ottawa because they're clearly going through a rebuild.
Yeah, no question. I think he's going to start the season. I think you need to see what Jason Botterill can do over the summer, and then I think Housley will be on a short lease next year. I think he's one of those guys that, hey, if things don't look right at the beginning, then he might have a problem. But I think he'll make it that far.
Okay. Other games last night, the Capitals beat the Hurricanes 3-2, thankfully saving us from one more storm surge. The Capitals reached the 100-point mark.
Mike, I mean, that's just mean-spirited. The fans were hoping for a win. They were hoping for that last storm surge. They didn't get it.
Okay, so clap at the center of ice and then say we're losers because we lost. Okay, but Washington reaches the 100-point plateau. They're 3 up on the Islanders with 4 games to go. So it looks like the Caps are going to hold on. I mean, it's not an insurmountable lead, but 3 points up with 4 games to go. I'd rather be in the Caps position than the Islanders. Yeah. If they hold on to it, then they will play the second wild card, the first wild card, which would be Carolina right now. So Washington-Carolina series, I don't think that's good news for the Canes.
No, it's not. I think in that series, Carolina's pesky. I think they win 2 games in that series. I don't think they can do much better than that. But still, I mean, I think fans would accept that because making the playoffs is a big step forward. They like their team. They know they probably have to get better in between the pipes. Mm-hmm. But things are looking pretty good. Let's see what they do over the summer. They need to spend some of that All-American football money on the actual hockey team.
Is there a rebate of $250 million? The Islanders did keep pace, though. They did beat the Jets 5-4. It just seems to me right now that the teams that are in the West that are at the top are sort of like not wallowing, but sort of they're not going into the postseason hot. I mean, right now, if you look at the Pacific, Calgary's lost 2 in a row. San Jose's lost 2 in a row. Vegas has lost 2 in a row. Winnipeg has lost 2 in a row. I mean, the hottest team right now is the St. Louis Blues. They've won 4 in a row.
Now, most teams, though, are fairly healthy. I don't know if Kane's back, but I remember he had a slight injury.
Yeah. I don't know if he's back either. I didn't.
Most teams are fairly healthy, so I think they would trade that for rather than being hot down the stretch. You know what I mean? Like, I think –
yeah,
they win their last game or 2, they're happy. But if guys are mostly healthy, that's just as important these days, especially in the West. I think the West is going to be a real pressure cooker. The East might have some easier, more favorable matchups for some of the better teams.
Yeah, Kane was back yesterday. He no points and -2 on the night. So
he's not quite right yet.
Right. So yeah, some of the other games, just to go quickly through them. Let's see here. The Panthers Senators was a meaningless game. 5-2 Panthers win. Stars beat Edmonton 3-2 in a shootout. Jamie Benn scoring the winning goal. It was a phenomenal goal by Connor McDavid. But again, Russ, every time I see Connor McDavid doing something fantastic, I think, what a waste, because he's doing it with that tire fire of an organization.
I just think it's interesting how, like, even the Canadian media is still like, well, Connor McDavid had this great highlight goal. You should check it out. And Leon Draisaitl had 100 points. And I'm thinking, the team's irrelevant. Like, I don't even get excited about these guys right now because I'm actually looking at playoff teams. I'm not looking at guys just compiling stats. Maybe at the end of the year, I'll say, hey, these guys had a great year, or maybe I'll look at a few of those McDavid goals. But right now, it just rings hollow for me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
No. And this is the thing. I look at organizations like Buffalo and like Edmonton, and they're sort of in the same you can put them in the same conversation because they were the top 2 picks in the 2015 draft, and there's always Eichel, McDavid comparisons, and how they've sort of continued to sort of wallow in mediocrity, even though they've had high picks. The Sabres have had 3 picks in the top 2 in the last 5 seasons. Edmonton, we know, had all those number 1 picks overall, and other picks in the top 5. And the thing is, they've not succeeded. And if you look at Nashville, Winnipeg, Tampa, Toronto, Boston, they've had success drafting players outside of the first round that have been able to contribute. And that's the difference. McDavid and Draisaitl are not the problem. Darnell Nurse is not the problem. Clefbaum is not the problem. The problem is you've got no support there other than those guys. So they have to carry such a ridiculous burden that it's just impossible. That's why I feel sorry for them, because that organization is not helping them. And
it's tough for the next GM too, because the Lucic contract is a strangling kind of contract.
It's a boat anchor.
It is a boat anchor. They have a couple others that aren't great.
Chris Russell.
We knew that wasn't going to be great. What about the injured defenseman? What's it?
Adam Larson.
Yeah, what's his contract like?
4.1 for another couple of years, I believe. That's pretty much a top 4 defenseman is going to cost you at least $4 million.
No, that's fine. But they have 2 or 3 bad contracts. Koskinen too. In a way, it's bad because now they are going to come to the realization at some point that they don't have a goalie again to go along with all the other host of problems they have.
Or if they do have a goaltender, they need to provide a defense in front of them and a group of forwards that can play a defensive concept that can, prevent him from having to stop 40 shots a night just to win.
I mean, I don't know if there's a GM in the league that could turn them around over one summer. Like, it may not be possible.
Well, on Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick's 31 Thoughts podcast, I was listening to it this morning, and the name of Mike Gillis, and we have to bring this up when Peter comes in. The name of Mike Gillis has started to pop up. Now, Friedman said that he doesn't know whether they just want to sort of pick his brain or if they're actually going to consider him a candidate.
Could be just a consultant.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a consultant, then fine. If it's him as a general manager, I mean, Peter can tell us of the disasters that occurred under Mike Gillis in Vancouver, and I'm sure he could regale us for a full show.
Yeah, but there are a lot of positives with Gillis too, though.
Yes. Now, speaking of the Canucks, last night was the debut of Quinn Hughes. Now, I only saw some of the highlights, but I did see the great play that he made on the Brock Besser goal. And, I'll say this. This is a new NHL. A guy like Quinn Hughes 10, 15 years ago, he would have the skill, he would have the speed. But the way the game was played, if somebody ever caught him, they would kill him. Yeah. In this game, he can survive. He can thrive. He is, his edge work is unbelievable. His speed is incredible. His passing ability. And he may not even be the best kid in that family.
No, he's not.
He's pretty damn good. And now
he's really good. I mean, he was buzzing around out there. Guys have trouble covering him when he's in the offensive zone. They just do. Because, again, he's thinking a step ahead of them, and he's faster than them. And so that does give him a little bit of advantage of what to do with the puck, where he's going to go. He's going to get a lot of assists in this league. He is. And he'll get some goals too.
Yeah.
But that's going to be, again, that power play. Just imagine if they did get Jack Hughes,
Besser, Peterson,
yeah,
Hughes, and whoever they get in the draft this year.
The other Hughes, like what would that power play look like?
Yeah, it'd be sick. I mean, I'm actually like, it's like I've never been a big Canucks fan, but I've actually been entertained and actually like the group that they're putting together. This is a skill group, and the only thing I'm concerned about with them is the durability of Pettersson and being able, because he's been out 4 or 5 times this year.
This morning on Sirius, I had to defend the Canucks. We talked about their prospects a little bit, and then I had seen an article just before I went on air, a really sort of embarrassing article that talked about how, Jim Benning is not producing enough defensemen there. And I'm thinking, well, he's only had 5 drafts. Mm-hmm. So if you think about the term of a defenseman, most of them are not coming up as quickly as Quinn Hughes, right? So Quinn Hughes has come up, and he's a top pairing guy. So let's not forget that. Jack Rathbone's playing for Harvard now. It's going to take him a couple of years. If Levy didn't get hurt this year, he was having a really good AHL year. He would have been up next year. Now that's sort of like in question. Maybe that sets him back a little bit. Like they have guys, Hutton was one of their guys, right? I mean, it's like I really don't know exactly where the criticism's coming from, because Tremankin, he just stayed over in Russia because of family issues. Like what's Benning supposed to do about that? But
and he may come back.
He will come back. I guarantee you he will come back. And so I just don't know what else he could have done in a 5-year period to make that defense much better via drafting, because that's all I'm talking about is drafting. And so right now I think they're in pretty good shape. Now imagine if they do get another defenseman in this draft. I mean, that certainly could help them. It's not a defense-rich draft like the last couple, but there's still some really good ones.
The funny thing is, I have little or no problem with Benning's drafting than I do with his free agent acquisitions.
Right. I mean, that's where the free agents and the cap situation. That's where you could point to some issues. But look, I mean, Sven Barshy was a good pickup. I mean,
Antoine Roussel, and
Roussel was a bad deal. There's no question about that. I felt like
Michael Del Zotto, they got out of the last year but Sam Gagne, they had to take on Ryan Spooner's contract to get rid of Gagne.
It was too, like Besser, big positive. Virtanen now a big positive.
Yeah,
he's mostly done a good job. It's just it's very difficult, even for the way the team was, the way the salaries were, and how they were hampered with long-term deals, with at least 2 or 3 long-term deals, and then they added onto it with Eriksson, which I think was forced from ownership. Like that really set that team back. And you know what? We could see where Vancouver's getting a lot better right away. And Elias Pettersson is another one of those great draft picks that Benning will probably never get credit for. But I'm telling you, you go back online, you could go look on Google how many Canucks fans were mad that they took Pettersson because, oh, look, he's 160 pounds.
Right.
How long are we going to take this guy to get here? He's too skinny. He's too this. He's too that. And now he's going to win the Calder.
Couple items here. I think we mentioned Ilya Kovalchuk a couple days ago, but he was basically told, "Don't come on the road trip with the LA Kings." By Willie, he did. Him and Willie Desjardins are not getting along. Now Desjardins is an interim coach; he's not going to be back. There's a lot of talk about Todd McClellan. I know that Friedman mentioned on 31 Thoughts possibility of Tony Granato in LA, former teammate.
Tony Granato, I think he can do something good there. He does. He's a guy that does like what they're doing or what they're trying to do in having a faster pace.
Right.
So Granato will be an offensive mind for them, which is good.
But the question is, I mean, last July we thought this was a bad signing. And I don't see any. First of all, they can't buy him out because he's in a 35 and over, so that they have the cap hit. And as you've said, Kovalchuk's going to want to collect every dollar. So it's either the new coach, reaches an understanding with Kovalchuk and he's able to play and produce and do something, or they find somebody they can trade him to.
I don't think anybody wants Kovalchuk. I really don't. I think They're going to have to eat probably half of that contract, which I don't think Blake will want to do.
Right.
To get rid of him, although he's such a malcontent now that they might do it. It's just such a mess. And again, it was one of the worst signings in the offseason. We didn't like it. We overvalued it, saying, hey, he probably could still get 50, 55 points. He's not even going to get close to that. Now, if he had his head on straight, I still think he could get 50 points. But there's so many negatives to him. And the biggest negative, and we talked about it early in the season, was that he changed that entire power play way too much just to fit in. He is not the kind of guy. Kovalchuk is not the kind of guy that fits in with a team. You know what I mean? The team has to work around him, and that it's not always pretty.
The other thing, and this is more towards the draft, and I don't know if this is going to affect the positioning of this particular player, but it's been basically assumed 1-2. It's going to be Jack Hughes and Kaapo Kakko. And the news came out today that Kakko has type 1 diabetes and celiac disease.
Oh, wow.
Now, I do recall, Russ, because Max Domi is a type 1 diabetic, that when the news came out, I think it was known, but it affected his positioning. I think he would have been drafted higher had he not been a type 1 diabetic.
It did. Now, the celiac, luckily in this day and age, that's a lot more treatable with diet and everything else, right? Because that's something. So ultimately, when you play at that kind of level, he'll overcome both those things. I don't think it's going to affect him. I mean, look, if you go back as far as Bobby Clark, it didn't bother him. He just, I always tell people, I remember reading Sports Illustrated, and he, the way he dealt with it in those days was he'd have a bunch of Coca-Colas before, during, and during the game. And that would keep his blood sugar up. Nowadays, they have a lot of better methods than that.
Yeah.
And between that and the celiac, all that means is he's going to have to monitor and maintain himself very well. And you know what? I think he'll be able to do it. I still think he'll go second.
Some other news: Oliver Wahlstrom, who was drafted by the Islanders last year, one of their 2 first-round picks. He signed an amateur tryout contract with Bridgeport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was some speculation earlier in the week that he was, and obviously the seasons in Europe are over with, or in the playoffs right now. But there was some speculation that he was going to go to Europe rather than, he's not going back to college. That was
right.
Yeah. But I mean, this is a young player, Russ, and we were talking about he can't really go to the AHL on a full-time contract. He can go as an ATO because he
can go on a full-time contract because he's coming from college. He just can't do it like this year. Next year, I think he can go straight to the AHL, and I think that's where he will go because his game's not ready. He's not, he doesn't have a 200-foot game yet. He started to get a little better at the end of the college season, but I saw him a few weeks ago, and then I saw him live, and I saw him in a few games, and he's still not ready. So it's nice to say he'll go to Europe, and that's fine to make money. But what he really does need to do is go to the AHL and develop.
Okay, I have to mention this just because it's humorous. An arena in Omsk. The arena for Avangard Omsk of the KHL has been slated for demolition over safety concerns.
Yeah.
They were playing in this arena a few weeks ago, and now it's basically been condemned. For all these players who go over to the KHL,
risk.
It's a big. I mean, not only risk of
injury, risk of a lot of things.
I mean, apparently the flights are safer now after the tragedy of Lokomotiv.
Defibrillators, no disrespect, but how many defibrillators are in every building? Do we think they've cleared that all up? I doubt it.
Yeah. On other news, Eric Brandstrom, the I'd say star prospect for the Ottawa Senators, got hurt in Belleville earlier this week, and he's out week to week. And Belleville, I believe, is going to be in the Calder Cup playoffs. So that
he'll put him out the rest of the time, and hopefully he'll be back for that.
Yeah. Let's check and see if we have a couple questions. I'll pull up one more.
I know we do.
Okay, go ahead. We'll do that.
All right.
Go with that.
Let's see. Cam wanted to let us know that he believes in Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and Yeti, but he knows the Flyers are done. He did want to point that out. So
believes in Bigfoot. Okay. By the way, I think the Seattle Sasquatch would be a terrible name. I want the Seattle Totems.
Michael wants to know, should Buffalo buy out Hutton and get a real number one? No, because they have Pekka Luukkonen and they have Ullmark. One of those guys will shake out. Maybe both will shake out, and that'll be their tandem. So they have to wait a couple of years. So they need someone to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
They're in a spot now where they're going to have to deal with what they've got.
The buyout candidates for Buffalo in this order: number one, Vladimir Sobotka.
Oh yeah.
He's got a year left at I think 3.5. If they buy him out, they save a couple million on the cap. I mean, they have a ton of cap space. I would buy out Sobotka first. I personally would buy out Zach Bogosian, but apparently, if the biggest rumor around here is that they're finally gonna trade Ristolainen, and if they do that, then they want to keep Bogosian around as the veteran guy to help some of the young guys.
That rumor is going around as long as
yes,
Bon Jovi buying the Bills was going around. So back in the day, I'm just saying, it's just like that's.
The Bills are living on a prayer.
Let's see. Oh, Anthony asks, would Nylander help Edmonton? And I believe he means William. I do think he would. Yeah. I do think there's a deal to be made. I think that, Edmonton would probably give up like a first and maybe Benson. And I think, and again, some people wouldn't want to give up Benson because he's having a great year in the AHL. But I think something like that would work. You could say no, but
I don't think Toronto would do that. I think if they're trading Nylander, they want a defenseman.
Yeah, they might want it, but they may not be able to get that.
Well, then you don't trade him.
Hold on, Mr. Snooty. William Nylander's stock has fallen greatly.
I know, but believe me, if somebody wants to trade for him, they're gonna be willing to give up something for him.
Yeah, I am. What I just told you is actually a lot because Edmonton's not going to be great next year, and Benson will play right away in the NHL. I'm just giving you that as an example, but I'm saying, yes, there's a deal to be made, and no, they may not be able to get a defenseman for Nylander because he's a winger who's playing.
He can play center. He can play center for other
winger.
He just can't play center for Mike Babcock.
And he may not be able to play center for a few coaches.
Okay.
We have to come to that realization. But right now, William Nylander is probably going to get dealt, as we've said. And I think the new caveat, actually, with the Leafs is, based on health, if Gardner really isn't all that healthy, I think he might come back cheap. And then if that's the case, I think you could see them trading Patrick Marleau, eating some salary and trading him because he's not going to help them next year. He's not going to help them now.
No, this is the thing. There's long been speculation about Patrick Marleau's 3-year contract actually being a 2-year contract, that he was going to retire after 2 years.
Right.
He has a bonus. I believe the money paid out on the 3rd year of his deal is a little over 4. I think it's 4.25, and 3 of that is signing bonus that he gets after July 1st. It's possible he retires and they trade his contract to a team that's looking to get to the cap floor. They probably have to give up a draft pick to do that. But teams, it would be like $1 million money payout for a $6 million cap hit. And there are teams that are actually looking for that this year to save money. So if he decides to retire, I don't think that's going to be a problem. And that would open up space for them to be able maybe to even keep Nylander or to re-sign Gardner if he comes back on a short-term deal. I think the focus actually is to get Muzzin on a long-term extension.
Right. Anthony asked, is Demko a future star? I can't say he's a future star. I could say I think he's an NHL goalie. I think he is a number one, but he could be Mike Palmateer. I don't know. You have to wait and just sort of see how it shakes out.
Well, they like Markstrom the way he's played this year, so it's going to be tough for him to pry away the number one job away from Markstrom.
I agree, and that's why it could take a few years. It could be like when Richter was sitting behind Van Beesbrook, and I'm not saying Markstrom's Van Beesbrook, so don't at me on that, but you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. Scott disagreed that he said 5 years is a long time. He thinks that Vancouver could have developed more, but yeah, Hughes looks real good. he wanted the Wings to draft him. But yeah, again, most defensemen take 3 to 5 years just to make it to the NHL.
Right.
He's only been at it for 5 years. He didn't have a lot to work with at the beginning, and he's gotten a few defensemen already to the NHL, and Yolevi would have been there had he not gotten injured. So I think he's doing okay. Again, that's something that's kind of tough. Let's see. Oh, Edward asked me, what do I think of Jack McBain for the Wild? I like him a lot. Actually, I went and saw him play in an All-Star game, Junior A All-Star game last year. He got a lot of hype. He was maybe overhyped a little bit. But
yeah, being the son of a former NHLer.
Right. But what he is he's big, he's smart, he's tough. He's a decent skating center who can play a 200-foot game. He's got a good shot. And I think he's a good third-line guy in the NHL, maybe a second. So I think that was still a really good draft pick. But, yeah, I think he was overhyped a little, but I really like him. I mean, I have a lot of respect for him. I spoke to him for a long time. He's very humble, has a good head on his shoulders. Let's see.
Well, while you're looking for the final question here, I'll just say this. There's some guy that I think we both know, Russ, who scored his 40th goal last night. I think his last name is DeBrincat.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know him?
Yeah, we talked about him this morning. There was a guy, I don't remember the guy's name, who told me he couldn't play in the NHL then there were at the draft. And then there were other people at that draft that were just like, yeah, I don't know about DeBrincat. And then there were other teams that didn't know if they knew about DeBrincat, but luckily the Blackhawks did.
I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Final.
All right, here's the last question. Be Easy, which, again, I give him points for the name. Russ, what's your take on Wahlstrom going from his freshman year at BC right to the Islanders farm? I think that is what's going to happen, but I can't guarantee you he's going to have a straight path to the NHL like right after. He's going to need at least one full AHL season, maybe two, because, again, he needs to be more responsible defensively. He needs to get stronger. The shot's there. The offensive ability and the skating is there, but it's not enough, and it's not enough for Lou, and it's not enough for Trotz. So they're going to let him marinate, even to the point of over-marinating down there because he's young, just to make sure he gets it right. And
it was an absolute mass exodus from like BU and BC.
They all left. Everybody jumped ship. Everybody.
Yeah. So,
and I do want to mention, like Chad Chris, also part of that crew, did get his first point playing for Rockford yesterday and looked really good on an assist. He's another guy, a defenseman with a lot of skating ability, smart, fast, but needs to get stronger, needs to round out his defensive game a little bit more. So, again, Blackhawks know what they're doing, and slowly they'll get better. But even, again, knowing that they have to fix their defense, there's no quick fixes on defense. That's really you think about it, short of Victor Hedman's and stuff, and even people were bitching about Victor Hedman for a year or two at the NHL level, if you remember.
Yeah, and you know what? The sort of the chickens are coming home to roost when it comes to the Blackhawks, when it comes to a couple of the guys, one of them being DeBrincat. His contract, I think, is up after next year. I'm just checking to see if he's got one more year left on his ELC, or if it's I think it's up, and I'm just checking Cap Central here to make sure.
Because the game's going on right now for college hockey. After we hang up, I'll definitely watch one and maybe even two.
Okay, DeBrincat's got one more year, but he's eligible to sign an extension on July 1st.
They might do that.
I would think they would do that because the price of poker is only going to go up.
Yes.
Now, and Dylan Strome, who they got, is in the same boat. He's got another year, but if they believe that this half season that he's had is for real, then they might want to be proactive and get him signed to a long-term deal as well. Now that might have ramifications in terms of them moving on, maybe moving Anisimov, maybe moving Brandon Saad, because they have to clear out space to
do what you got to do, but I would get those guys locked up because that is your next wave and you have to do it. But again, this weekend I'm going to cover some of the college hockey tournament up in Lehigh. So there's some really good games, and that'll be fun. Arizona State University is a team they're an independent. It's funny because their goalie DeCord is Ottawa draft pick. He 7th round pick. He was like 6 picks from the end of the draft, and he might win the Mike Richter Award this year. We've talked about him earlier this year, but he's been great. But the other thing that I'm hearing is the way people write about Arizona State University, besides being independent, that the rink is like not even college hockey, quality. So they're real Cinderella stories. So I'm interested in seeing them and covering them.
Yeah, it's got to be hell to keep that thing refrigerated. Okay. All right. Great show. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.